Right friends, welcome back to newspaper editorials discussion and news for a while. The first one is with regard to Supreme Court bans sale registration of BS3 vehicles from April 1, and here the important point to note is this date of April 1, 2017 was well advertised in advance, or you can say it was decided long back, and the important point to note is how the vehicle manufacturers have left with inventory of more than 8 lakh vehicles. Why they have manufactured BS3 compliant vehicles more than 8 lakh as on date? They will be available by 1st April. So, by 1st April 8.24 lakh vehicles will be available of BS3 compliant, and Supreme Court straight away said no for registration from April 1. So, yesterday we discussed slightly about this BS3, BS4, BS6. Let us go back to history. This BS norms were introduced somewhere around 2000. Country switched over to BS2 from 2005, BS3 2010, now 2017 April 1 BS4, and country will switch over to BS6 from 1st April 2020, and here at present BS4 is implemented in select cities, and from 1st April 2017 entire country will switch over to BS4, right. So, here then the important aspect is skipping BS5, country will switch over to BS6 from 1st April 2020, right. And now what are the changes required? Changes are required in supplying clean fuel. For example, if you look at BS3 in the fuel supplied, that means in petrol pumps, in BS3 fuel supplied, sulfur content can be up to 350 ppm or parts per million. But if you look at BS4, it is limited to 50 ppm only. So, 350 ppm to 50 ppm. So, you can very well understand the emissions or pollutants released into the atmosphere will be reduced drastically. So, here expenditure is incurred by this oil manufacturing companies, and here at the same time to suit this BS4 fuel, this vehicle manufacturers have to upgrade their engines. So, fuel pumps and other parts, some sensors are required, many changes are required in the engines, and when the country switch over to BS6, further modifications are required. So, here important point to note is this oil manufacturers already invested thousands of crores of rupees for producing the fuel compliant to BS4, and why the vehicle manufacturers are so slack in putting up the inventory of 8 lakh vehicles, knowing very well that from 1st April these regulations are going to be implemented across the country, right. So, having learned this, let us look at the emission figures in petrol vehicles, and please remember these figures are taken from some source, but they vary from source to source, and here most of the papers or articles presented this picture. And petrol emissions, how the carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, nitrogen oxides will be reduced when we are switching over from BS3 to BS4 to BS6, like that. And the striking aspect is with regard to diesel emissions. When we are switching over from BS3 to BS4, then this particulate matter will become half, and this NOx, that is nitrogen oxides, will become half. So, there will be substantial reduction in especially nitrogen oxides and particulate matter, or you can say PM 2.5, and there will be almost the emissions will be reduced to half, right. So, 0.05 to 0.025, these are grams per kilometer, and similarly NOx will reduce from 0.5 to 0.25. And the important point to note is, when we are switching over to BS6 further, there will be further drastic reduction in nitrogen oxides as well as particulate matter. So, the need of the hour is the country to switch over to BS4 from April 1, and from April 1 2020 to BS6, and Supreme Court is right in its judgment or perspective, right. So, the present problem is 8 lakh vehicles of BS3 are already available, and Supreme Court said that no registration from 1st April. Right. Now, what the manufacturers will do with those vehicles, we have to wait and see. Oil refiners, there is no problem, they are ready, no problem with oil refiners. They spent thousands of crores of rupees to produce clean fuel, and the automobile manufacturers, they could have exercised little more caution in this aspect. Deliberately they have produced BS3 vehicles, there is no doubt about it. Then Lok Sabha passes GST bills after marathon debate. In fact, 4 bills were passed, and only state GST bill are to be passed by respective legislatures of states, and 4 bills required to be passed by parliament are passed, and now decks are cleared for the implementation of GST from 1st July 2017. Please do not forget. Westinghouse files for bankruptcy. Please recollect our discussion 3 days ago. We discussed that Nuclear Power Corporation of India is the operator in our country on behalf of Government of India, and this Westinghouse, this is required to establish 6 nuclear reactors at Kovada in Andhra Pradesh, and this is a subsidiary of Toshiba, and here you can say Westinghouse is into financial troubles, and problem number 1 is Japan Parliament yet to ratify. Unless it ratifies, Toshiba cannot undertake this establishment of reactors in Andhra Pradesh, and at the same time Westinghouse itself is into problems. Now it filed for bankruptcy. So, the establishment of nuclear reactors in our country, 6 numbers as promised by Westinghouse, is big question mark at this juncture. Talks on with Sri Lanka. This is Sri Lanka talks, only 2 aspects. This is basically pertaining to this. This is international maritime line between India and Sri Lanka, and issue number 1 is our people are going into their waters, our people are going into Sri Lankan waters, that is one problem. Second important aspect is the bottom trawlers are used, because of which the ecosystem is disturbed. So, these 2 problems are there, and any number of times discussions may happen, but the issue to note is Indian fishermen are going into their waters. Second one is bottom trawling is adopted by basically Indian fishermen. We discussed these 2 aspects. Then Brexit spotlight turns to talks between UK and EU. Please recollect, UK Parliament passed the required legislation to go out of European Union, and here the regulation is basically Article 50 to Lisbon Treaty. So, this Article 50 to Lisbon Treaty is triggered by UK. So, now within 24 months UK will come out of European Union, and if you go back to the history of the formation of European Union, in fact the concept of European Union originated after Second World War. The reason behind it is, if the countries have good business relations, then naturally the situation to going to war may not arise. With that in intention, the first step was on 9th May 1950 that Schuman Declaration was signed for the production of Franco-German production of coal and steel under common high authority, and we celebrate 9th May as Europe Day. Next step is Treaty of Paris, which established European coal and steel community. At the same time, Treaty of Rome established European economic community, and subsequently Maastricht Treaty, or the treaty known as Treaty on European Union. So, this is the Maastricht Treaty, and it led to the creation of single currency euro, and the final treaty is Lisbon Treaty. So, Lisbon Treaty in fact amended Treaty of Rome as well as Maastricht Treaty. So, now this Article 50 under Lisbon Treaty is being triggered by UK Parliament to go out of European Union. That is the news item. So, the mandatory period is 2 years. Within 2 years, UK will come out of European Union, and for that purpose Article 50 corresponding to Lisbon Treaty was invoked yesterday. That is the news item. Then brain computer link is new Musk Ventures goal. This is one article of Business Line yesterday, and yesterday if you recollect we discussed about Tesla Motors. He is Elon Musk. Tesla Motors is basically electric vehicle manufacturer. It is betting big on electric vehicles, and at the same time Elon Musk is the man behind SpaceX. From preliminary examination perspective, I told you that you should not forget Falcon 9 rocket. Basically it is a reusable rocket, and the brain behind it is Elon Musk. The third technology is Hyperloop, high speed passenger transportation of up to 1200 kilometers per hour. And after these three, the fourth important venture of Elon Musk, not many details were revealed by Elon Musk, and he started a new company, Neuralink. The new company Neuralink is based on neural lace technology. What is it? It is implanting tiny brain electrodes. The tiny brain electrodes are capable of uploading and downloading our thoughts. So, thoughts can be uploaded and downloaded, and it will be a brain computer interface, you can say. So, as to realize that mission, now this Neuralink company was established by Elon Musk, and here Neuralink was registered as a medical research fund, and the technique could be used to improve memory or give humans added artificial intelligence. But the experts say that, what the experts say? The experts say that we have very limited understanding of how the neurons in the human brain communicate. So, the neurons in the human brain, how they communicate, we have very limited knowledge, and our methods for collecting data on the neurons is rudimentary, and under the circumstances the new interface, brain computer interface, which is the main mission of Elon Musk, that is a neural lace technology. Through his mission of Neuralink, we have to wait and see how it will transform in the future. Right. So, this is about the project of Neuralink by Elon Musk. Right. Now, let us move to analysis part. Today, there are 6 important articles of the Hindu, out of which nuclear suppliers group I am presenting as a special capsule, because nuclear suppliers group we have not discussed till date, and if we discuss here it will go to 20-25 minutes. Not only that, I may not be able to do justice for that particular article if I discuss here. Remaining 5 articles we are going to deliberate in detail. The first one is about this mental health care bill, which was passed by the parliament. Yesterday we discussed with the Times of India editorial, and this bill provides for protection and restoration of property rights of mentally ill persons. So, these things we have discussed yesterday. And if you look at the positive aspects of mental health care bill, the first one is the recognition of the right to medical treatment. So, basically for the mentally ill persons, it recognizes the right to medical treatment. Then most important legislation is it decriminalizes attempted suicide. If anyone is attempting suicide, it will not be criminalized. This is one landmark development. Then it accepts agony of people with mental illness. Then another important point is freedom to choose treatments is inbuilt in the mental health care law. Then prohibition of discrimination, regulation of establishments working in the field. Then the new legislation prohibits seclusion of patients, and it also prohibits the general use of electroconvulsive therapy. So, you can say what is the meaning of electroconvulsive therapy? Giving shock treatment to the brain is electroconvulsive therapy, and it prohibits general use of electroconvulsive therapy on the mentally ill patients. So, these are the positive aspects. And now, what are the challenges? The biggest challenge is psychiatrists. In India, the availability of psychiatrists is not up to the mark. The availability is just 0.3 for 1 lakh people. If you look at China, the availability is 1.7 for 1 lakh people. And at the same time, there is a massive deficiency in the availability of trained clinical psychologists, and at the same time psychiatric social workers. The biggest problem in our country is clinical psychologists, and at the same time psychiatric social workers are in short supply. Then the national mental health care program has not been sufficiently funded with the health budget, and in most of the states are not in a position to accept even money also, because sufficient infrastructure to take care of the patients was not built in the states, frankly speaking. So, these are the challenges, and now what is the way out? Here the way out is raising effective primary and district level coverage of mental health services for the general population, and this prevents people to travel long distances. The important matter here is to take care of the mentally ill patients, then sufficient infrastructure must be available, must be generated in small towns and district headquarters. Second one is use of trained general practitioners as the first line of contact. Give training to the general practitioners so that they will be useful as the first line of contact. That means if any patient is having some disorder, then the first person to approach, that means the first doctor, will be the general practitioner, and general practitioners must be sufficiently trained to take care of problems of the mentally health care people. Then primary care physicians, as just now I have told you, can be trained to help people with mild and severe problems ranging from anxiety disorders to depression, as well as conditions arising from excessive use of alcohol and drugs, right? So, the modern treatment approaches rely more on family and community support, and another important aspect with mentally ill patients is, in our country there are several non-governmental organizations. There are several non-governmental organizations, but the quality or the condition of maintenance is below par in those organizations. First of all, government should act tough on those shady non-governmental organizations, right? So, these are the aspects when you look at the mental health care bill. And now back to square one. Back to square one, what is the meaning? That means we are in some bad situation, and we have done something to go towards a good situation, but again we came back to the bad situation. That is known as back to square one, right? Here you should know about the situation in some of the North African countries. Here Libya, here two governments are there. Please look at this. This Libya, this Tunisia, Algeria, these have coastline towards the Mediterranean Sea. These are North African countries, Libya, Egypt. Now, if you look at North Africa, after Arab Spring, I will explain you what is meant by Arab Spring. After Arab Spring, only Tunisia established responsible and responsive government. After Arab Spring, Tunisia is the only country which established some sort of democracy or democratically elected government. Some sort of democracy is restored, what I mean to say, in Tunisia. And if you look at Libya, it is having two governments, civil war is going on. If you look at Egypt, the same situation which was prevailing in 2009, that is why the article with the headline back to square one, we reached the same position. Then if you go back to this West Asia countries, or you can say this is known as Middle East, and these countries are West Asia countries, and if you add Egypt, that is known as Middle East, but Egypt is North African country. Please remember we discussed about Egypt and Libya, and here if you look at this Middle East countries, now Yemen is into civil war. Yemen is already into civil war. Syria is into civil war. Iraq, Islamic State presence is there. So, in Middle East, Egypt, of course, it is not into civil war, but this oppressive regime is continuing. So, what the countries achieved after Arab Spring? Nothing in fact, except Tunisia. All other countries are into chaos. So, therefore, nothing was achieved after Arab Spring, frankly speaking. And what is Arab Spring? So, this is Egypt, I have already told you. And before going into the aspect of Egypt, let us look at the meaning of Arab Spring. Arab Spring means, all of you are familiar with dictatorial governments, dictatorial regimes, mostly ruled by kings in West Asia as well as North Africa, or you can say if you take this part of the world at the same time, North Africa, and in these regions most of the regimes are authoritarian regimes. Most of them were ruled by authoritarian regimes. At the same time, they are known for dictatorial attitudes. And in the year 2010, what happened? In the year 2010, first in Tunisia, there was protests extensively, there were protests extensively across the country, and subsequently the violent protests, non-violent demonstrations in some countries, riots, these started in Libya, Egypt, Yemen, Syria and Iraq. So, what is the idea of these protests? Why people rose in protests? The idea behind Arab Spring is, we do not want these dictatorial regimes. We want democracy. We want freedom. We want freedom to live. But what happened subsequently? Except Tunisia, I have already explained, various countries are into civil war, or if you look at Egypt, that oppressive regime is still continuing. That is why the article talked about back to square one. So, several countries are into civil war after this Arab Spring protests, except Tunisia. So, in fact, the condition in the countries further worsened after Arab Spring. So, people came to the roads, came to the streets in mass protests against authoritarian regimes. But what happened is, countries were thrown into civil war, right? So, we are seeing several problems and civil wars in countries like Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Libya after the violent protests as part of Arab Spring. So, in Arab Spring, the countries, or you can say citizens, decided, or you can say they tried to have better days, but the situation worsened. They were thrown into difficult circumstances. So, that is the reality of aftermath of this Arab Spring, right? So, subsequently countries like Libya, Yemen, Syria, Iraq were thrown into civil war. Only Tunisia established a democratically elected government. When you look at this article, this Hosni Mubarak, he was the president, dictatorial president of Egypt for 30 years. In Arab Spring in 2011, he was thrown out. After that, Mohammad Morsi became the 5th president, and within 1 year, he was also thrown out, and now the president is Abdel El-Sisi, and now the state is acting as totally against the civilians as far as human rights are concerned. So, the days of Hosni Mubarak are not different from the present days of Fateh El-Sisi. So, the article says after this Arab Spring, no improvement took place. Now, Hosni Mubarak was out of jail now. His 2 sons were released and they came to the open, and the present government of Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is still continuing the oppressive regime. In fact, Egypt has not gained anything out of this Arab Spring. This is the essence of this article. As I already explained, Libya is into civil war, Syria is into civil war, Iraq is into civil war, Yemen is into civil war, and in Egypt that oppressive regime is still continuing, right. So, the present issue is Hosni Mubarak and his sons were released. People are not protesting, there were no rallies, no demonstrations. Probably people have thought that this is much better than the situation in countries like Syria, Yemen, Iraq and Libya. That is why people are satisfied with one more oppressive regime of Fatah al-Sisi, right. So, this is about the present issue. This NSG, this is discussion for one capsule. I will present one capsule. Next one is clamping down on creativity. There is a big debate going on in the country, liberalism versus conservatism. Liberalism versus conservatism. Almost the country is divided, not now. For the past several years, it is divided on these lines, and it is not new, and this article says that liberal thoughts must be given same view in the opinion of Censor Board or Central Board of Film Certification. Please look into this. Censor Board, loosely called, and the actual name is Central Board of Film Certification, and this is a statutory body, please understand, and films are certified here, and some films are not being certified, and at the same time some films, several cuts are enforced, and this article is basically with regard to the Censor Board. This article argues that Censor Board is crippling the freedom of expression. Censor Board is totally crippling the freedom of thought and expression, and this is not acceptable as per this article. And all of you are familiar with the recent incidents of Padmavati as well as Lipstick Under My Burqa, and this film is by Alankrita Srivastava. The Censor Board has not cleared this film, if I am not wrong, and India is leading the world in the production of films. Around 1600 to 2000 films both in Hindi and regional languages are produced in the country, and several times the discussion comes into picture with regard to the interpretation between the liberals and the conservatives, and also between custodians of culture and the intelligentsia in the urban areas. So, there is total standoff between these two sections. If you look at it, is the liberals versus conservatives and custodians of culture versus urban intelligentsia, or you can say liberals. And now, salient points, the author says Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution guarantees fundamental right of freedom of speech and expression. 19(1)(a), fundamental right of freedom of speech and expression. But at the same time, there were some restrictions imposed under Article 19(2). There were some restrictions imposed under Article 19(2). the freedom of speech and expression can be curtailed. There can be curbs on the freedom of speech and expression if security of state, sovereignty and integrity of the country, friendly relationship with foreign countries, public order, decency and morality and defamation are affected. Then government can impose restrictions on the freedom of speech and expression. So, here the vague word is decency and morality. This decency and morality, the interpretation by the conservatives is different, by the liberals are different, by urban intelligentsia is different, by the custodians of culture is different. So, the debate goes on and that will go on. So, here the ban on a film is justifiable on the above grounds, and films have been banned in India, and he is giving some statistics, and at the same time he is also stating that films are banned for 6 reasons. The first reason is when the country is shown in bad light. When the country is shown in bad light or poor light, one example is India's daughter. Then second one is if the movie shows our leaders in bad light in unfavorable manner, that is case number 2. Case number 3 is movies depicts communal violence. That means if the movies are inciting communal violence, then they can be banned. Next one is when it hurts the religious sentiments of the people, it is banned at present, and Da Vinci Code is one example. It was banned in 5 states because it hurt the sentiments of Christian community. Then movies can be banned on the ground of obscenity, and this Kama Sutra, this was banned, but the book is available. Then the next one is the films which deal with tabooed subject like lesbianism and transsexuality are also banned in our country. So, the author argues, why are you banning all these things when we are fighting for the rights of LGBT community? Now, the rights of LGBT community became a major issue across the world. So, when we are fighting for the rights of LGBT community, why are you banning these films? And the basic questions are the constitution under article 19(2) bans, or you can say under article 19(2) there were some restrictions, and they are only justified under 19(2) of the constitution. That means the basic question is whether censoring films and protesting against the freedom of the artists are legally justified under 19(2) of the constitution or not. And second point is the prohibition on the grounds of public order or obscenity may be justified, but prohibition on these grounds are not justified in the view of the author. The prohibition on the grounds of it hurts the pride of the people of the nation, it hurts the religious sentiments of the community, that it defines Indian sensibility, it is against Indian ethos or culture, it is women oriented. So, the author strongly argues that the banning of the films with these conditions is not acceptable. With these things in view, banning of the films is not acceptable because they are clearly untenable as they are not covered under article 19(2) as per the author. So, conclusion of the author I have given here: ban on films which criticize the nation reveals our immaturity in accepting criticism, and ban on films which raise modern issues on condition of women like water or Gulabi Aina or fire should not be banned because we are fighting for the rights of LGBT community, and the prohibition affect democracy and rule of law, and the colored exercise of power permits the state to control the free flow of information, of thoughts, creativity, speech and expression. So, the focal point of this article is please do not ban on these grounds, and it totally against freedom of speech and expression. Please ban when the films constitute the conditions given in article 19(2), then only please ban, otherwise please do not ban. And at the same time, liberalism is the cornerstone of our democracy, that is to be preserved. This is as per the author. Liberalism is the cornerstone of democracy and that must be preserved, and wider debate is going on in our country, right. Next one, give them a break. 2 minutes I will spend on this. Here the issue is Ola and Uber. They came to the country, in fact one is Indian born and the other one is multinational, and Ola and Uber, how the working conditions are adversely affecting the cab aggregator platforms. How the adverse conditions are affecting the cab aggregator platforms. Cab aggregator platforms means this Ola as well as Uber, these are known as cab aggregator platforms, and the working conditions are badly affecting the drivers. So, that is the crux of this article. Here several drivers recently joined through this Ola and Uber. In fact, it led to increase in traffic in tier 1 and tier 2 cities. These drivers are required to work long hours and they become exhausted after working for 7 days a week without rest, and that affects their health and they will have implications for the safety of all the taxi occupants. And India has a huge road accidents burden every year. As per one estimate, 1.5 lakh people are losing lives. As per another estimate, more than 2 lakh people are losing lives because of road accidents. And this app based cab drivers need to look at several important aspects. One is incoming bookings, app instructions, directions, as well as coordination with passengers for pickup and drop. So, all these aspects are to be looked after by cab aggregators. It is putting a lot of mental strain on them. So, this is mentally and physically taxing and they became exhausted, and the lack of rest can lead to drop in concentration, which may lead to accidents sometimes, and some of the drivers are resorting to stimulants, making them prone to addiction. In fact, in Manila, drivers have taken to drugs such as methamphetamine to cope with long working hours, right. So, here what needs to be done? The author strongly feels that there should be a cap on the number of working hours. Second point is drivers' working conditions and payment terms must be optimized. Third point is drivers should receive mandatory health insurance benefits, regular health checkups. Then national level framework is the need of the hour. So, our hunger for cheap and convenient transport systems should not cause adverse effects on our health and safety, right. So, a lot more needs to be done. If you look at the condition of the drivers working with this cab aggregator platforms. Last one, for profit presidency, Donald Trump article, and certain words please do not forget. Yesterday I think we discussed about crony capitalism. Crony capitalism is the mutually beneficial relationship between businesses and the government. Mutually beneficial. I will give you this much, please give me this much. This is the relation between business houses and the government. If that is the relation, then it is known as crony capitalism. Capitalism sometimes lead to crony capitalism. We discussed about this yesterday, and today we are going to deliberate on one more important word. This is conflict of interest. These words are very important. Crony capitalism, conflict of interest. So, from this article, I would like to explain you what is the meaning of conflict of interest. Here you see the meaning of conflict of interest is a situation that has the potential to undermine the impartiality of the person when the person is holding very high post. Let us take example of Donald Trump. One side, he is the president of USA, and on the other side, he is one of the world's biggest business magnates. So, he has personal interest with businesses. Here president means he should be for the common good of the people. So, there is conflict of interest. That means, if he takes some decision as president, it may benefit his business and there will be suspicion on whatever he is doing. So, this is known as conflict of interest. So, today if Reliance Industries head Mukesh Ambani becomes Prime Minister of the country, what will happen? Then conflict of interest will come. So, conflict of interest is very interesting and important word. Please understand, in business we come across this word several times. So, what Donald Trump has to do? There are two options. One is leave the president, probably it may not be possible, otherwise leave the business. Business, you put it into some trust and forget about that business, let it run independently by some trust till as long as you are president. But Donald Trump has not done them, right. So, what about rules and regulations in America? America, there is one emoluments clause. As per emoluments clause, it is illegal for government officials to accept any present emolument, office or title of any kind, whatever from any king, prince or foreign state. He is having his own businesses. Here he may be under conflict of interest because of his own businesses, right. Already a lawsuit was filed stating that foreign governments may influence Donald Trump by patronizing his properties or businesses. If he is having some business interest in China, let us assume he is having his business interest in China, then there may be shady understanding between China and Donald Trump. That is quite possible. So, that is known as conflict of interest. Then the lawsuit also says that he should either sell off his business holdings or put into a blind trust managed by a lawyer or other trustee with whom he will have no contact. The president, however, says that he has removed himself from day-to-day operations, but the important point here is his family members are operating the businesses and the president may be vulnerable for future lawsuits in United States of America, and in future there are prospects of impeachment also, right. So, we came to the end of this discussion today, and the most interesting one is conflict of interest, right friends. Please do join at 12 o'clock for discussion on comprehension ability. Have a nice day. Thank you.